how did you make the pivot to the startup scene? And also, what was kind of the motivation for you to start Vanna?
Yeah, so as you said, so I spent most of my initial career in finance. I do have a background in computer science. I did my undergrad in computer science, and then I did a master's degree in finance. And so, working in finance, particularly in the quantitative space, I initially had the idea for how can we bring quantitative tools to fundamental investors.
Yeah.
So in finance, quants have these very sophisticated tools for analyzing data, in particular analyzing large amounts of data, but those tools were difficult or inaccessible to fundamental investors. And so that's where I started my first company, AlphaHat, to get a feel for what was going on with, generally speaking, retail consumer brands, and trying to analyze, for example, you can use mobile geolocation data as a proxy for foot traffic and get some sense of like trends for how that grows or shrinks over time, and analysis on specific regions. So I sold that company to Earnest Research, which is an alternative data provider that has some of these additional data sets like credit card data and whatnot. And then as LLMs started becoming more and more prevalent, I started thinking about how could we use LLMs as part of the data analysis process. And I think particularly for problems that we see in the alternative data space, it's kind of similar in the sense of, so if you are giving alternative data to an end user, whether they're an investor or whatever, basically you can present it to them in a dashboard, and the dashboard will be able to answer typically a fixed set of questions. And you set those up as drop downs and things like that. But anytime that the end user has an ad hoc question that they need answered, then you're essentially, the only alternative is you have to give them raw access to the data, deliver them the data, and then you have additional problems of, that end user needs to know, like SQL, they need to know the structure of the database, how to query it, and that sort of thing. And so that's where I started thinking about, how we could leverage LLMs to kind of bridge that gap, particularly for people who may not know SQL or maybe just generally unfamiliar with like a particular data set that you're getting.
When did you first find out about Streamlit, and what decisions kind of led you to decide to use it in your startup?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the hedge fund space in particular, the kind of preferred mechanism for receiving large amounts of data is typically Snowflake. And Snowflake has essentially become kind of like the de facto standard for receiving large amounts of data. And I think Snowflake has done a good job, in particular with Snowflake Marketplace, to be able to be a conduit for packaging and distributing data that end users can essentially bring in directly into their environment.
Yeah.
And so I was working a lot with Snowflake, the platform. And then when I saw that Snowflake had acquired Streamlit, that's when I had started looking into it. And then, with Vanna, so the core of Vanna is an open source Python package. And so because it is effectively Python based, Streamlit is a natural add-on, because you can very quickly add a front end to the Python package components. So since we're on the Streamlit podcast, I'm going to focus on like the Streamlit UI on top of Vanna. So as I mentioned, at the core, Vanna is like an open source Python package, and so we provide a bunch of underlying functionality that helps you generate SQL using large language models. And generally speaking, we're trying to be agnostic to which large language models you use, and then I'll get into it later, but also which vector databases you potentially use. So so this is a Streamlit interface. We have like a few configurable options. And I will click on all of them so that you can kind of get a sense for how this is going to function. But basically, using this, you're able to just ask questions to your database directly. So right now, we are connected to like a demo database that I think it has data on, for example, like apparel sales. And so we could ask a question like, what are the top 10 customers by sales? And let's say include first and last name. So we ask that as a question, and that basically goes to the LLM, and we generate SQL from that question. So we asked, what are the top 10 customers by sales, include first and last name, and then the SQL is generated. And you can see, it included first name, last name, the total sales. It knows how to join things together. It does your group by. Then now once it's generated that SQL, it also runs it for you, so you get the results in a table. And then beyond that, we also provide additional functionality like generating, for example, Plotly code. So Plotly is another popular Python library that helps you generate charts. So generally speaking, you never have to see the underlying code for Plotly, which is why it's an option. But so this is an example of the Plotly code, and then this is an example of like the rendered Plotly graph. And as you know, one of the reasons to choose Plotly is because it has like good integration with a number of different front ends, and one of those front ends is Streamlit. So Streamlit, has this kind of deep integration with Plotly. So this shows up really quite well in this interface. And then there's additional functionality like generating follow-up questions, and for example, you could so we asked about sales, it's suggesting like let's say for example, how many orders does each customer have and whatnot. So that's a kind of like quick overall tour of like putting a Streamlit interface on top of Vanna. And so before I move on, I can address a couple of the questions that came in, I think. So I think we got a question on like, is it free open source? So yes. So the core Vanna Python package is open source, and if you go to GitHub Vanna.ai /Vanna, you can find the source code there. The way that this works under the hood, so there's two main components. So you train a retrieval augmentation model, and you train it on your sort of like DDL statements, which is like just some metadata like about your database. You can give it documentation, and then you can also give it some reference SQL queries. And then we generate embeddings and then store that into in a vector database. And then whenever you ask new questions, we're trying to find the most similar reference training data, and then that is sent to the LLM, which then returns SQL. And then once you have the SQL, then you can execute it, you can generate the charts, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all downstream functionality. So you can choose to host any of these components yourself. You can choose which vector database you want to use. You can choose which LLM you want to use. So those are just like components that are like easily implementable and swappable within the context of the Python package. We also provide some hosted solutions so that if you don't want to set up your own vector database and you don't have, for example, an OpenAI key, we can proxy those requests. So one of the things we found is like GPT 3.5 Turbo is very cheap for us to run. So if you're comfortable with that model, you can use that through us if you don't have an OpenAI API key. But if you do, you can use that, or you could plug into whichever LLM you want to use.
currently you're working at LlamaIndex as the head of TypeScript and partnerships. That's quite a journey there for you. Can you tell us a bit more about maybe what's even missing in your resume to begin with, or what's missing in your LinkedIn profile that we don't know about
No,
you? That's pretty cool.
that's pretty good coverage. That's pretty good coverage. I've always
Right.
been interested in startups, and yeah, so Citadel, I'm legally obligated not to say anything bad about them. So,
Yeah.
but it was a good learning experience for sure, and high frequency trading was a lot of fun. But I think like for why LlamaIndex, right? Is very few times in my career, right? It's only happened to me
Yeah.
twice, where you look at something come out, and it's like everything that you have built is completely obsolete, right?
Wow.
So that happened to me once when I was an intern. I was an intern at this place called Palm. We made smartphones in 2006, and then 2007 the iPhone came out, and then like nobody was interested in Palm smartphones anymore. So
Yeah.
similarly, when I saw what could be done, January 23rd of this year, I went to a hackathon for like the first time in years. And when I saw what could be done with ChatGPT, I'm like, everything we were building chatbots for 7-8 years at Apple. Everything that
Yeah.
we were doing is now obsolete, right? Now, like the chatbot's still there. I mean, you can use the one we built, or you can go to like, Comcast or Best Buy. And if you do a side-by-side comparison between, any of those chatbots and ChatGPT, you're like, which 6-year-old made these chatbots? Like, it's like, we got a whole team of, front end, back end, data scientists, and, like people who are deep in the AI. But it's like, it feels so outdated
Yes.
that there's no going back. And so when I saw that was possible, I was like, okay, I have to get in on this.
Yeah.
And LlamaIndex obviously has an amazing open source community. Jerry and Simon are both very, very dedicated to open source, and also to code quality, and to building the best tool for developers. So I was like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I have to do it. So LlamaIndex is a data orchestration tool for large language models. So large language models like ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude. We're actually going to be showing some Google Gemini today. But we're a data orchestration tool, which means that we connect your data with the large language model. And we do that
Yeah.
by connecting to the large language model. We connect it to the vector database, and we create a bunch of strategies for this thing called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So why would you want to use LlamaIndex? Well, if you want to use LLMs with your data, right, then you would want to use LlamaIndex, right? If you want to build a chatbot that's like, talk like a pirate, you don't need to use LlamaIndex. But if your company has data, you have data on your customers, your customers are giving you data, then you need to use a data orchestration tool like LlamaIndex.
Can you just explain what LlamaHub is within LlamaIndex and how folks can use that to build some of these applications we're talking about?
Absolutely. So LlamaHub actually started as an independent project.
Okay.
The idea behind LlamaHub was really to say, okay, we are building applications with data and LLMs, right? Now we need all these different things like loading different documents, right? That's where it started, right? So you want to load your Word document. How do you load your Word document? So what LlamaHub is it's a central source of loaders. And in fact, now we have support. So now you not only can you use it with LlamaIndex, you can use it with LangChain, you can use it with Embed Chain, you can use it with Vector Flow, you can use it with Semantic Kernel, you can use it with Haystack. So you can use it with pretty much every LLM framework out there to say, well, I have some data in this format that's not text, right? Because the LLMs understand text, and well, now they understand images too, right? But I need to get that into the LLM. So LlamaHub started out as data loaders. Then we added tools. Now with Llama Packs, what it is it's really about, okay, well, I want to have Streamlit, right? I want my application to use Streamlit. right? I want my application to use a particular vector database, right?
Yes.
So let's make it really, really easy to integrate that into your application. And that's what these packs are. In some ways, it's really about just making it easier, which is like, this is what I admire so much about Streamlit, right? You all make it so easy to build anything on Streamlit. And so we're sort of taking inspiration from that to say, okay, how do we make things even more easy and intuitive to use with LlamaIndex?
Let's first of all define what multimodal is, because that could just be another buzzword for most folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So multimodal, I think, is super exciting. We have this engineer, Hao-Tian, he's done some really great work on it. The basic idea with multimodal is that why should the LLM be limited to a text interface, right? And the answer is it shouldn't, right? Because there's so much other useful data out there. There's useful ways for people to communicate out there. So what multimodal is saying, okay, can we have images in the LLM? Can we have video in the LLM? Can we have audio in the LLM? I don't know how many of you all saw Google's demo of like that, like sort of real time video and audio, and then everybody's like, oh, afterwards, like, oh, hey, this thing is fake. Okay, I'm here to tell you, it does not matter that it was fake. Okay, because here's what's going to happen in 2 years. That's going to be real. That's going to be a real demo. Like that in 2 years, you're literally going to be able to show the LLM a video and talk to it. And that's just super exciting. That's just like, you just think about like these things now that you can just interact with them in a very, very natural way, in the same way that, you and I are interacting right now, right? Like, so I think multimodal is absolutely very exciting, and we're definitely very excited to partner with Google Gemini. We also have integrations with GPT-4V. We also have integrations with the open source Lava model. So I think there's a lot to be done there.
I might challenge you a bit on your prediction there. You say it in the next 2 years, and you can correct me if you say it within the next 2 years, because that would encompass time from now to 2 years. But I feel like it's going to happen much more faster than we can anticipate, actually.
It could happen even faster. Wild. It could happen even faster. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, so awesome. I'm going to share just a very, very quick multimodal demo that I did with Streamlit. Cool. So this is like literally, true story. I was up late fixing a bug last night, and like coming back home at 10 on the train. So I didn't have time to work on this, right? And then this morning I'm like, crap, I have to get this demo. so I bust out Caroline's Streamlit LlamaIndex demo, and I'm like, okay, I got to just get this thing working with multimodal. And within 20 minutes, I'm not joking, within 20 minutes, build this GPT-4V clone with Google Gemini. So basically, you can just ask this a question. So you just like describe this image, right? And it calls Google Gemini.
Yeah.
And it gives you a description, right? So so now you're like, okay, well, this is like sort of like, whatever, right? Like we've actually had image to text models for a while, right?
Yeah.
So, but then you notice something here. It says it's an alleyway in New York City, and then you're like, huh? Why is this an alleyway in New York City? Right? Is it? Yeah. So you're like, are you sure? What city is this in? Okay, let's try this again. Right? Is it hallucinating on me? Right? Like what's going on? Right? Like. Okay. Well,
potentially, right?
It's very, very confident that this is in New York City. Okay. So since I'm doing this in Chrome, I can actually do an image search, right? So I'm right here. So I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna go search for this image. So search image with Google. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Right. And then this is a photo, right? So let's see. Oh, it is in New York City, right? It's in Tribeca, actually. So this is the really, really cool thing about these models, right? It's not just a describer, right? And you can say you can say, well, what colors are the signs, right? So Like they don't talk about the signs in the description at all, right? Actually, I haven't tried this. Let's see what Gemini says. Let's see what Gemini says.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah,
But it's off.
it says it's red and white, which is correct, right?
Nice.
So,
yeah.
So it's not just like a image to text thing. It actually understands the image, which I think is super exciting. The other thing I think is super exciting is that like building this with Streamlit was super easy, right? So like this is all of the code, right? We'll share this. We'll share this in the chat in terms of this is MIT license. Go ahead, do it. But it's like this is the entirety of the Streamlit code, and half of it was Caroline's. Half of it was her demo code that I just adapted. So really easy. Really good developer experience with Streamlit. This is the kind of thing that like, hey, like your boss is like, hey, I want to show me something with multimodal. You whip this up, and then like you're in like half an hour, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go home for the week.
While I was at university, I kind of quickly realized that I want to do things that are kind of create things that are out there. So having my own projects was always like the choice. While I've been setting up hackathon community that is now LabLab, it used to be Deep Learning Labs. Actually, I'm so old. They rebranded by now, and I'm super happy to see how they're growing. If you haven't checked them, they are basically testing different latest LLMs and other multimodal models, giving you access to them so you can hack and learn in a cool kind of competitive environment. So I started with that, and that was my entry to AI, I would say. And then from there, I discovered GPT-3. That was like roughly 3 years ago. And the rest for me is history. I've been down the rabbit hole of LLMs ever since, and just trying to learn as much as I can, basically, since then. My latest passion is the podcast. So it's called just Sandra Kublik podcast. And I interviewed their folks, especially ladies in the LLM space that are experts from different angles. So it could be a product expert in chat interfaces, it could be safety expert, it could be a community leader. Yeah, I'm really interested in learning through conversations with them because this ecosystem is very dynamic. So it's really good to, poke people's brains about it and learn things otherwise you wouldn't learn just by cursing through the internet yourself. Yeah.
What's kind of your intro of Cohere? What is Cohere?
Yeah, well, you should know Cohere if you haven't come across it yet. So let me tell you. So basically what we do is we develop LLMs. We're one of these foundation model companies that train LLMs and then kind of distribute them via our platform, API, via our cloud partners. We design models with enterprise clients in mind. And that means we provide a lot of customization options. We make sure that the models are being trained with responsible AI framework, that they are secure, that you have plenty of options when it comes to deployment. Yeah, so I would say that's like a rough description of what we do. And we work on two types of models. We focus exclusively on text modality, but our models interact with multimodal data. As an example, our text generation model can interact with documents that have multiple modalities, text, visuals on it, and can reference them successfully and kind of process them successfully. But we primarily focus on text and kind of try to really perfect that area. The two types that we work on is text generation models. So that will be command that you've mentioned already. And it comes with different variants. You can have like a super robust version, it's the base kind of command. You can have a light version that's faster, cheaper, I think significantly. And then there's nightly that we use to train our model overnight, and every single day you get a new version based off of the interactions that the model has. On top of that, we also have the text representation models. So these models are a little bit less intuitive for people typically. We can talk about them later on, but essentially what they do is they translate words into numeric representations that machine can understand and start manipulating with. And so here we have two flagship models. They're state-of-the-art when it comes to the market landscape. One of them is Embed, the other is Re-Rank, and they come in English and multilingual versions. So we also cover a lot of other languages than English. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up when it comes to like a super brief intro, but I'm happy to dive more into different aspects during our convo today.
Also on the Streamlit side, we're very happy to learn, of course, that Cohere are power users of Streamlit, and you folks at Cohere, you use it for demo purposes and also prototyping, and even beyond that, the Cohere community, you guys host hackathons. People get to build cool stuff with Streamlit and Cohere. So I don't know if you have any of this that you want to show us today during the demo, but this would be very cool to kind of jump into that and see some of those cool applications here.
Yes, that's amazing. So that's my favorite part. So I want to preface it by saying that we're mad fans of Streamlit as a prototyping framework primarily. I can tell you that when I joined Cohere roughly 2 years ago, we were having these monthly sessions internal sessions called Cool Demos, and we've been using Streamlit to for individual folks that were coming up with ideas to kind of build something quickly and show to others, just to explore the extent of possibilities with the models. Because the beautiful thing about LLMs is that, and it keeps being true, having been in this field for 3 years, that you keep learning more and more about what's possible with them. They are becoming more and more powerful, so you actually can explore these different capabilities and form new ideas, and also it can even shape to some extent the way we think about the product. So it's been very, very powerful. And so this comes from one of these like cool demo sessions that we had internally. This one is done by Adrian Morissette, my colleague at Cohere. He works on our embeddings, but he also is a very creative folk, and he likes to make especially like just fun projects, for the purpose of fun. So this is our co-founder, Ivan Zhang. He's known for being really good with coming up with different affirmations. When you're building large language models, things don't go smooth always. And you need to keep the positive frame of mind to persevere in the most difficult moments. So Ivan is phenomenal at this. And so what Adrian did was scrape all the affirmations that Ivan has come up with in the past that were available on our Slack channel. And then he trained our command model to come up with new affirmations that would sound like Ivan has come up with them. So yeah, let's ask him for some new. If you're going to do it, do it now. There's no better time than the present.
All right.
In the world of copycats, be an original. Yeah, things like that. So this is like, yeah. So that's like a perfect example of what Ivan would say, and this is like unique generation of an affirmation based off of his basically personality and his previous chat history. So we are able to see kind of replicate what the Ivan factor in this app.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder how much data that was there already. How many affirmations he was already writing? Was it a big data set or?
No, it wasn't. So Yeah, it wasn't like a fine-tuning situation whatsoever. It was just like a bunch of few examples in the bigger prompt.
Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Streamlit Live, and follow us on LinkedIn to get all the updates on future live streams that we'll be hosting. And with that, I just want to say happy streaming. Goodbye.